Hello. So in this short tutorial video, I just wanted to show off a few different examples that I've made that show off how you can procedurally change the material of instances in geometry nodes. I decided to make this video after watching a few of Ducky 3D's videos and following some of his tutorials, which are very well done, and I highly recommend checking out his videos as well. I'll be using a few of his examples in here to show off how you can apply some of these procedurally changing materials. I've seen a lot of people, especially Ducky 3D, covering on how you can change the transformation of instances, but normally there hasn't been too many people talking about changing the color, which can really help improve animations. So I just wanted to show off about 6 different examples of how you can do just that, and you can take these and play around with them, or you can use them in some animations. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to go up to my scene collection, and just for organizations, I just want to make a new collection, and I'm just going to call this collection color. You can name it whatever you want, but inside here, just as another thing for a setup, I'm just going to go to my meshes and make a cube. I'm going to take this cube and I'm going to go into edit mode and select its sides, and I'm going to then bevel. Don't need that much of a bevel. I'm going to bevel it. I'm going to take the cube and bring up properties. I was missing that tab. I'm going to go into here, modifiers, add a modifier, add a bevel modifier, move up the segments just a little bit. Apply them. I'm going to go and do Control A to apply its scale. I'm going to right click on it and shade smooth. So we just have this little cube. I'm just going to call it base cube, but you can name it whatever you want. And I'm just going to make it invisible because we don't really need to see it. We just need to have it in our scene. So the first thing I'm going to show off is how you can procedurally change the color with the transformation, changing its X, Y, or Z position. So I'm just going to do Shift A and pull up a plane. I'm then going to go into geometry nodes, and I'm going to add a new geometry node. I'm going to call this geometry node example 1. So what we're going to do is we have our input, and we're going to make some instances on points, and our points are vertexes, which we have 4 of. So I'm just going to take this off real quick. So as you can see, if we click on vertex select mode, there are 4 vertexes here. If for some reason you do not want to have 4 vertexes, and you just want to create your own amount, you can go into a separate video about that, but it would just be going into adding in points, and then you can increase the number of points you want from there. I'd recommend going to a Ducky 3D video about that because it would explain it a lot more. But for now, nope. For now, I'm just going to be using those 4 points. So we have our instances. So we're saying that for each one of these points, we're going to paste a instance onto them. So I'm going to go up to this base cube. You don't want to click on it. You want to hold click and drag it into your node editor. You want to take this geometry point, you want to plug it into instances, and now, like I said, on each one of those points, we now have a cube. We have the cube that we made before. So now that we have that there, we can now grab another very important thing, which is allowing this to work, which is our store named attribute. And you can, for adding nodes, you can go over here to add and select from here. Or I like to do Shift A, and then you don't need to click on search, but you can just start typing letters to find the things you want. So we have our instances on point, and we have a stored name attribute going into there. This stored named attribute will keep our transformations. So a few more things we'll want to add is we want to realize our instances, because originally they're just instances. They're just a copy of our original cube onto those points. But with this node here, we're actually transforming that into a mesh that we're able to manipulate. So the next thing we'll need in our group is to set material. And we don't have a material yet, so we're going to do this step now by just clicking onto our object, onto our plane. I'll actually change this to example 1 plane. Once again, that step doesn't matter. You can have it whatever name you want, but we're going to go down to material and we're going to click new. So this is material 0.12 because I already have a bunch of materials because I was testing them earlier to make sure all these steps worked. But I'm just going to change this so it's a little bit easier to remember to example 1. So I can go down here. You won't have this big list, but my material that I want is right here for example 1. I can then go over to the start, and as a final step, I want to grab my example plane, and I want to drag that into its own geometry nodes. What I want to do is this, is I want to grab its location, and I want to shove that into value. I then want to create a new node for geometry, transform geometry, and I want to shove it up here. And I'm going to take my location and shove that into translation. So that way they will move together. So now, one more final step is to go into the stored named attributes and give it a name so we can call it later. So I'm just going to name this EX1. So just short for example 1, you can name it whatever you want. You could name it move, you can name it tree, anything. So I'm just going to have this as EX1. So I'm going to click on that, do Control C, so I make sure I'm copying it correctly. And I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to make it horizontal. I clicked right here and then I clicked horizontal split because I want to bring up another tab, which is the shader editor. So inside the shader editor, we have our principled BSDF, and we're going to do Shift A, click the search, and type in attribute. So this attribute here is basically what we're calling from the stored named attribute. And like before, we want to make sure the name match. So I'm just going to do Control V to make sure it matches. And then the next step is to grab this, not color, this factor, because that's what we want, grab the factor, and let go of click, and now you're able to type in a node and it will automatically connect them together. So what I want is a color ramp. So with this color ramp, I'm going to take it, I'm going to go to color, I'm going to plug it into base color. I'm going to go back up to the top and change over to viewport shading so I can actually see those guys there. Now, what you want to do is in between your attribute and color ramp is go and add a math. And in here, you want to decrease the value until you start seeing that shading. So I'm actually going to make this 0.15, but it might be completely different for you. So this is the whole thing. All of it is right here, and now we are able to take this move and it will change where its color based on its position. It's just that easy. If you really break it down, we are using 1, 2, 3, 4 nodes. And everything else we're just using object information for these 4 nodes. Okay, so now that example of showing how to change the color based on its position, I want to show off how you can change its color based on rotation. So I'm going to go back to collection color, just going to click on it, and I'm going to do Shift A, and I'm going to make myself a new plane. So I have my plane here, just as before. I do not need to make a new base cube because I already have it, and I can make a new geometry. I'm going to just move that part down. So I have my new geometry, and just like before, I'm just going to show off the previous version. It is going to look very similar to this. I'm going to go into my plane, and from here, I'm going to add in my transform geometry, which is going to lead into a store named attribute, which is going to go into a instances on points, which is going to go into realize instances, which is going to go into set material. So we use this transform geometry to understand where our points are, their rotation, their scale. We store the information we want in our store named attribute. We create the instances with our instances on points. We make those points into meshes, and then we have a material for them to have. So once again, the next step, I'm just going to change this name to example 2. And I'm going to take it. I'm going to just drag into there. I'm going to go to my base. I'm going to go to my base cube. I'm going to drag it into here. And what I want is the rotation. So I'm going to take my rotation. And I'm going to plug into the transform geometry. And I'm going to grab my rotation. And I'm going to create some new nodes. I'm going to separate this into a vector because the issue is I want to take this rotation and plug it directly into my value, but you're not able to do that because there is a lot. The rotation can't simply just be compressed into your value. So I'm doing a method that probably has a simpler solution, but I'm taking this rotation, which is a vector, and I'm splitting it up into an x, y, and z. I'm then going to combine this back into a vector and plug it into my value. I'm going to call this example 2. I then have my cubes, and I'm going to put them on the instances, and they're right there, like little marshmallows. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to pull this down, create a new material. I'm going to call this, what do I call the other one? Call the other one example 1. Okay, I'm just going to keep that pattern example 2. Now I go here, add in example 2, and this part is done. So now I can go to my shader editor and I can add in an attribute and I can plug in color ramp. And I want to make sure that this name is the same. So just to double check, EX2, EX2. I can then take this color and plug it into base color. It's completely dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go add in my math to just increase the value ever so slightly so that way it's not completely 0. Also, just to explain what goes on here, let me just stick this back here. The way this is working is that rotation has a number to it. When I take this part, I'm rotating it on an axis. And as you can see in the top left corner, when I move it this way, I'm rotating it 41 degrees. If I rotate it the other way, I rotate it negative 24 degrees. And whenever I'm changing one of these values, they're all added back together. And because of that, we need to slightly change the value because let's say the value is, I rotated it 0.47 degrees right there. We're taking that value and plugging it into this factor, and this factor is being slowly increased and decreased based on that number, which is giving us this black and white color changing effect. So I'm going to take my value, I'm going to plug it back into here, I'm going to make this 0.15, and now when I rotate it, is now changing its color based on its rotation. That is how you can change the color using the rotation of your object. Okay, so now as the third example, I wanted to show off how you can change the color based on size. So I'm going to go back to color, collection color, add in my plane, make new geometry nodes. I'm going to go into here and once again, make my transform geometry. I'm going to go and add in a store named attribute, which is going to go into instances on points. You can then realize those instances and make set material. So before doing anything, I'm just going to take my, name this example 3 plane. I'm going to scroll down to materials, create brand new material. I'm going to select example 3 that I made earlier. And with that, you can then go into your set material and pick example 3. Once again, names don't matter, but okay. So next steps are going to be, once again, dragging in the object for the object information. If you don't want to do this, you can also just search for object info. You'll have your object here. Then you can use this little watermark grabber and select the object you want. But this way is a little bit faster. Go and grab base cube and pull it in here as well. I'm going to go into geometry and plug it into instance, our little marshmallows. And what we want this time is scale. So I'm going to plug scale into here. I'm going to plug scale into my store attribute. And I'm going to change the name to example 3. So there's one more thing I need to do here, which is different from last time, which is plugging scale into the scale of the instances. Without it, just to kind of show what would happen is as we make this smaller, the instances aren't changing their size, they're just being pushed into a smaller area. and it looks awkward and it doesn't look as good. So what we want to do is we want to take this scale and we want to plug it into the scale of the instances on the points. And now when we change the size, the instances will change their size with the object and stay in this kind of nice uniformed pattern. So now with that done, once again, go back into the shader editor, go here and make an attribute. And we're going to make sure that the attribute is the same size. So EX3, take the factor, plug it into a color ramp, take that color, plug it into base size, play around with the color just a little bit, but add in a math. I'll make it 0.15. Nope. Okay. Make it negative. Move it down just a little bit. Okay. For me, I needed it to be negative 0.5. But now, if we were to increase the size or decrease the size, we have that working. It is now changing its size based on their, it's now changing their color based on their size. And that is example 3. Okay, so showing off those first 3 examples, I just wanted to show you how you could apply it on your own, changing the color based on the size, rotation, or position on the X, Y, or Z axis. But just to show you some more fun examples of what you can really do with this animation-wise, I'm going to show you how to make this in a second, but this is something I've made where as the cubes get larger, they will slowly change their size to yellow, and as they get smaller, they'll change their size to blue. So as you can see, we have this larger cube here, which is this nice kind of yellowish green with this more of a darker blue when it gets smaller, and then it's in between is more this uh, kind of saturated green color. So I was going to make that invisible and go back to my collection color, and this time I'm going to go to my curves. I'm going to go to my curves, and I'm going to go to circle. And what I'm going to do here is slightly different from the other time I did this. And also, I just want to highly recommend going to Ducky 3D's videos. I'm going to leave them links to them in the description because some of the things I'll be showing off here is stuff I've learned from those videos, and I just wanted to use them here to show off how you can apply making procedural color to those animations. So we're going to make a new example and call this circle color change. That's what I'll just call it. So the first thing I want to do is add in a new node called resample curve. And I'm adding this in to just have more points. There's now more points, as you can see, as it changes, but it will be more obvious once I put in an object for people to see. So I'm going to go to here, go to transform geometry, plug that into there, plug in store named attribute, plug in instances on points, and plug in realize those instances and set material. Once again, all those steps from before and just doing them again. So before I do anything else, I'm just going to make a new material and call this, I don't know, circle material. The name doesn't matter, but that's what I'm just going to go with. So circle material, have it right there. And what I'm going to do is once again, grab my base cube, pull it in here, and put my geometry into the instances. So at the moment, this is the instances are very big, so I'm just going to drag click, selecting all the scale, and slowly make it a little bit smaller. Going to go for 0.2. That looks nice. Just for now. So the next step with this is to create a animation cycle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in noise textures. So this noise texture here is going to be very important, and we're going to make 2 of them. This is explained a lot more in the Ducky 3D video, but this is the method that I'm going to show you here allows for a smooth cycle animation. Instead of without it, it would create these jump cuts. So this method right here, where we're going to use 2, so I'm going to do Shift D to duplicate. 2 of them are going to work together to make a repeating animation cycle. So I'm going to make both of them 4D. I'm going to make their width, the width does not matter. I'm going to make the scale 1.5. I'm going to make the scale up here 1.5. Set detail to 0 and detail to 0. I'm going to plug them into a color mix. And before I go any further, I'm going to add in a group input node. This is the exact same node I have up here. I have it down here, and I'm going to plug in the W from this noise texture. I'm going to plug in the W from the second noise texture, and I'm going to grab the factor from this color mix. Also make sure to, it might by default have color, it might have color as a default. You just want color mix. So with that, you can then take this result and put it into a color ramp. And you want to take this color here and go up to your instances on points and plug it into the scale. So now you can see they're a lot bigger now, but they're also of a random size, which is what we want. So we're going to go to this black color, and we're going to increase its size a little bit. And we're going to the white color, and we're going to decrease its size. Move it around a little bit. That looks nice. So as the color gets whiter, it gets larger. And as it gets darker, it'll get smaller. And by moving these, we can set the range for what we would want from them. To add a little more variety, just play around with them on your own. But this is what we have for making this kind of circle. Also, if you want, you can go back to this resample curve and you can increase the number, the count, for more cubes. I'm just going to leave mine at 13 for now. So the next part is I want to show off an animation that you can make with this. So I'm going to go to this part over here. If you don't see it, you might need to press this like arrow on the side of your screen, or you can just press N to pull it up. But I'm going to go to this area down here, this group sockets, and there'll be this W, and this factor. So I'm just going to rename this W to noise 1. I'm going to rename this W to noise 2. And I'm going to bring up, I'm going to right click horizontal. I'm going to pull this down. And also I'm going to click on the modifiers where you can see these outputs. So with these outputs, you can manually control them. So I can manually increase this noise. And now you can see all the circles, all the squares are now changing their size because of it. I'm going to set that 0. I'm going to click here and go to this tab right here underneath animation for our keyframe animations. I'm going to go over to 0 and I'm going to set noise 1 to be 0 by clicking on this little circle to the right of it. I'm going to go to noise 2 and I'm going to change it to a -5, and I'm going to set that as well by clicking that circle there. And I'm going to go to factor and change that to 0. I'm then going to click and go over to 250, and I'm going to change the noise to be 5. I'm going to change noise 2 to be 0, and I'm going to change factor to be 1. So with this, we now have a short animation that will constantly loop in a very nice and easy way to show off the animation. Now the next step will be adding color to these. So to add color, we can go over to, I can join this down to save room. I can go over to my shader editor and I can right click, Shift A to add an attribute. And I'm going to go to my stored attribute up here. And what I need to do is I need to take this mix and plug it into a color separate. Because like I said before, the way this is working is we have this color here, which is our value, which this has a lighter value, so it's a value of 0.017, and this has a value of 0.108. And the way it's changing between colors is by taking that value, and the way its value is changing is when it is moving left and right on the factor area, and is moving on the factor area based on this mix color. So because of that, what we want to separate is the value, and we can do that by making the separate color and clicking on HSV, hue, saturation, and value, because that's what we want to basically single out. So I'm going to click on value, and I'm going to plug it into value up here, and I'm going to give it a name of example circle. Example circle. I can now go back to here and type in example circle. I can make sure those are exact same. EX circle. Yep, they're exactly the same. So now I can go to color and go to color ramp. And what I want to do is I want to use some more interesting colors. So I'm just going to go this black, I'm going to move it up, and I'm going to give it a kind of a bluish green. I'm going to go to the white and give it a kind of, let's go as a lighter orange and yellow. And I can take that color and shove it into base color. And right now we have this, which isn't too exciting. So I'm going to play around with these until I get something I like. And now that's looking pretty good. And I can press play and I get this nice little animation. So something I am noticing is that the cubes themselves are not getting too small. So if you're having this issue, I'm just going to go back to here. I'm going to click on this color here, and I'm just going to make it a little bit darker. And now they are able to get a little bit smaller and really show that they're changing their size. Okay, so sorry for that. My mic cut out, so there's probably going to be a bit of a jump in the video, but I just wanted to show off the two last examples, which are using proximity to change the colors of your instances, which can be much cooler for making animation stuff. So just to kind of show a little sneak peek, I have a group of cubes right here on this plane, and I'm going to take this empty I have, and as I drag it across the cubes, they will slowly change color. And just like before, this is very easy and simple to do, and I will show you how to do it. Okay, so back at collection, color collection, and I'm just going to click on it, and I'm going to do Shift, Mesh, Plane. So I'm going to then rename this to example 4 lane. And before starting, there is one more thing I want to do, which is going into here and subdividing it. Subdivide it again, subdivide it one more time, because I want all these vertexes so I can put a mesh onto each one. This can also be done using a geometry node for subdividing, but I just like to have it here just so I can visually see it, but there's also other options. So I'm going to make a new geometry node, and like before, I'm going to go here, transform geometry into a store named attribute, into a instances on points, and I'm going to realize them. I'm going to set their material. I'm going to go down to here and create a new material, call this example 4 mat. Once again, the name does not matter, but if we go down to here, example 4 mat, and I want to plug in my base cube, grab it, pull its geometry into instances. It's a little big, so I can just go down, select my scale. That's a nice size, but I think I want to make it, nope. There we go. A little bit closer together. And now the next step is adding in another object. And this object, as you saw earlier, is going to be down here. I did Shift A to add, and I'm going to go down to empty and go to plane axis. So I'm just going to call this empty example 1, and I'm going to go back to my geometry nodes, and I'm going to pull this empty into here. So with this empty, this is going to show how you can use proximity for making your procedurally changing colors. So what you want to do is with this object info, you want to plug it in to a math. No, not Boolean. Okay, we'll just do it the other way. Make a math, add in location, and we're going to also grab a position and plug in position of the object into it. And we're going to take this value and we're going to plug it into our stored named attribute, and we're going to change the name to just example 4, just to keep it simple. So with that, we can go into our shader and search up our attribute, and we can take this attribute and we can do example 4, grab our factor, put it into a color ramp, and plug this color into base color. And it's that simple. So now you can go and click on your example empty, and you can move it around. I made one mistake. You do not want to add, you want to subtract. There we go. You want to do subtract, that way it moves with it. Now, with adding, it will do the opposite. And that is how you can do example 5. Okay, so the final and sixth example that I wanted to show off, which I think is the coolest example, is changing the color based on proximity. Different from the last one, which is just changing on the position of the empty that we had. This one will be using actually the proximity of a new empty node. So I made a new empty right here. Just do Shift A, empty plane, and I renamed it to empty example 2. So in my color collection, I'm just going to go here and I'm going to do Shift A and create a new plane. And then with this plane, like before I was talking about, we could also subdivide it to have more points manually in edit mode, but there's also a node that can do that for us. Both ways work, so I'm just going to show off how we could do that here. So I'm just going to go into here and do a subdivision mesh, and I'm just going to push that number up to 2. So from here, I want to add in a transform geometry, and slightly different from before, this transform geometry is actually going to go into the instances on points, and then we are going to store the named attributes, and then we are going to set the material. So at no point do we need to realize the points, but this is what we have, this is what it basically is looking like right now. So I already made a new material already, so I'm just going to click new, and I called this one the final material. So I can go here and click on final material. This is just a blank material. I restarted this one because I made a small mistake, and I want to make these as simple to follow as possible. So inside of here, we are going to once again drag in empty example 2, which I made, and we're going to grab our base cube. So I'm just going to grab all these, move them a little bit, make things a little neater. I will go and put the geometry onto the instances. So right now we have a bunch of cubes, and I'm just going to grab these and shrink them down. And like you can see, the subdivision mesh is working, as giving us more points. So I'm actually going to subdivide this again. I'll make this area a little bit bigger and make the cubes a little bit smaller. Okay, that looks good. Let's actually add, nope. Make this negative 0.04. Okay, no. Make this 0.3. Gonna make this 0.2. Okay, so that's looking nice. So we have this nice little grid that we can use for our proximity animation. And what I'm going to do now is with this empty is do a new set of nodes. So this is going to be mesh line. And we don't want location going into count. We want location going to start location. And we want to go into count and set that to 1. Now we want to make a new node called proximity, geometry proximity. And this will help us tell when our empty is near a certain cube. So we can then take this and we want to take out distance, and we want to make this a float. Do not want that. We want float want a value. We want a map range. That is what we want. And we want to plug distance into value, and we want to pull results out and get an X. Apologize for that. My mic cut out again. We want it. Okay, so we had a proximity, and the proximity went into our map range, and our map range went into results, and our results is going to come out as a separate X. No. as a combine x, y, and z, and we want results to go into z. And we want to take this vector here, and it is going to go straight into value. We'll come back and mess with this map range later. It's important, but for now, we're not going to touch it because we can't see what it's doing until we add in the color. So I'm going to go here and give the name final. I keep it the same example final, and that should be it for here. So I'm now going to go to the texture here, which I have named final material, and I'm going to do a little bit more here than the other examples. I'm going to take this principal BDSF, and I'm going to do Shift D to duplicate it, and I'm going to type in shader mix shader, and I'm going to plug both of them into this node here, and I'm going to grab a attribute, and my attribute will be my exam final. And one step I did miss in the geometry nodes, you do not want it to be points, you want it to be instance, because we want to be affecting the instances. So in the geometry, it should be float in instances, and then in your shader, you want to change geometry to instancer because we're using instances. We want to take this factor and we want to go into a color ramp, and we want to take, it will go into the color ramp, and we want to take this factor and plug it into here. Okay, so we haven't seen anything just yet. We want to take this color here, we're going to make it blue, make this like more of a purple. Actually, let's make this a white. So we want to go here now, and we want to take this and we want to flip. I'm just going to move these values down a little bit, and something I want to do is go into here and add a math. And after adding this in, we will hopefully start to see better example of what I want to show. Because at the moment, it is having a little bit of trouble showing off how its proximity works. So because of that, I'm going to go back to my geometry. So I just double checked. I did make a mistake in the geometry. So just to let you know, you want to go into geometry, proximity, and instead of faces, you want it to be points. And there we go. We are starting to see what we wanted to find before. So we can go back into here and play around with these values a little bit. And now we're able to start seeing that. And now, like I said before, the color range, the map range would be important, is we can play around with some of these values. So with this value here, we can change the radius. This value can change how strong the colors are. This value here changes R to minimum. And you can play around with these colors a little bit until you find something that you like. I'm going to have it so wait, I want to have, I just decrease this a little bit. So I want to have a nice little kind of 3x3 square, and then make this generally expand. Now, like that, I now have an empty, which will change the color of my squares with proximity. And that is the final example. I hope this was interesting to you. I thought it was really fun to make all these examples. It took a bit longer than I thought because the key thing I was missing out when I was originally making these was not fully understanding how to properly use store named attribute. But with this, there's a lot of possibilities of what you can make. You can make animations. You can play around with creating procedural areas. inside Blender, but overall, these are fun little tricks you can make that can really play around with what geometry nodes can do. So I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. And if there's anything else you would want to see made, I'm more than willing to give it a try and make a video about it.